Hello, everybody. It's me, Molly Moran. Nice to have you all here today. Today's class is Dig Into Tannins. So we are going to talk about and drink a trio of red wines. And if you're joining us from Madison, I think during the course of our time together, a snowstorm is going to show up while we're drinking these red wines. So I can't think of a more perfect class to be teaching for the weather. If you are not joining us from Madison, maybe you're someplace warm and good for you, and I hope you still enjoy the red wines. And maybe you're someplace like Minnesota and you're also dealing with the cold winter. So either way, wherever you are, it's going to be a great class. So thanks for being here. And if you're joining us on the recording, it'll also be a great class regardless of the weather. So if you're watching us live and you haven't yet filled out the poll, please do so. It's one question. It's really going to help me kind of gauge who's out here today and what y'all like to drink. And that will kind of help me kind of as we walk through and talk about these wines and what tannins do. And if you are joining us live, it looks like a lot of people did finally find the chat. It took you guys a little time today, I will say. But if you haven't already weighed in, the question is, what's a chat, Brad? You're funny. You're so clever. The question on the table is, what's a podcast or two that you've actually been enjoying lately? And thanks for the great suggestions, because a lot of these are new to me. So I am the kind of, I don't know if I'm going to blame it on generational. I'm going to say that I was the kind of Gen Xer who was like, I don't know about podcasts because I really was. I was like, I was totally a hater for far too long. And now I am not. So to answer the question for myself, I listen to The Daily every morning when I walk the dog, This American Life, and Brené Brown's podcasts are amazing. So I'm a late adopter. Thank you, Janina. I'm a late adopter. That's better. I was a hater. Now I'm a late adopter. I think that's great. So there's still time. Weigh in with your favorite podcast, right? The Daily, man. I will say I've maybe missed an episode or two since the inauguration because I feel like I can breathe and not have to listen to the news every day. So it looks like for the poll of what do people drink, what's the wine of choice? It looks like the solid winner so far right now is Hearty Robust Reds, which doesn't really surprise me because if you're taking a class about tannins, I would assume that you probably like them. But Smooth Velvety Reds is a decently close second. So it's good to kind of see a nice spectrum of things. And for those of you who are white, rosé, and bubbly drinkers, it's really important for me to know that as we're going, and I'll soon explain why. So let's dig into those tannins here. I don't know if any of you saw it. I recently started doing on our social media, I started doing some kind of like, I'd call them mini wine classes, because I follow a lot of people on Instagram who are putting out like really useful information about all sorts of things. And I like them so much. I respond really well to that kind of social media that I was like, wait, I should be doing that too. So I've started to do it this year. And I just did a post earlier in the week about tannins. So this class is definitely a more advanced version of that, but maybe you saw it there. So here's our time to really dig in a little bit. So here's where I'm going to be kind of sciencey and nerdy for a few minutes. So if you haven't already poured yourself a little Pinot Noir and you do want to start drinking, we're going to get to the Pinot. So go ahead, and if you want a little wine in your glass while I talk, do that. Oh, and thank you. It's nice to see in the comments that those posts are really helpful. Thank you. That's where I'm kind of focusing my energy. I think that it's a really nice way to, for those of you who come to these classes all the time, it's like, oh yeah, right, I know that information, or like, yep, okay, that jives with what I know. Or maybe there's like a little tidbit in there that you haven't heard before. And for those of you who don't ever take classes, or you want to share with, friends who say like, I don't know anything about wine, I'm trying to make them somewhat approachable. So here's the time to get a little bit nerdier. So tannins are polyphenols that occur naturally in all sorts of plants, many of which we eat and some that we don't, including things like legumes, pomegranates, coffee, tea, all sorts of things. They actually have a bitter flavor to them, and they dry out your mouth. And the way that they do that is they actually attach to I'm gonna make myself big for a second. I don't know why, just feel like doing it. The tannins actually attach to the proteins that are on your tongue, and that makes them less soluble in your saliva. So you go from being able to swallow and have kind of everything go down to when you swallow, your mouth is physically actually dry, and that's because of the tannins. So they do dry your mouth out. So one thing that I often hear is when people talk about they want a dry red wine, you are talking about tannins. They want a wine that physically makes their mouth dry. And I understand why that's the word you use, because your mouth is dry after you drink such a wine. Unfortunately, the word dry in the wine profession is used to talk about the level of sweetness in a wine. So if somebody says to me that they want a dry red wine, we're going to engage in a conversation about whether they mean dry as in not sweet or dry as in high tannin. So just a heads up that being more specific about your tannin preference is actually more helpful than just saying dry. So tannins occur in grape skins, seeds, and stems. And they're also in oak and some wine additives, things that would get added to wine in the winemaking process, depending on the people making the wine. The way that wine is made, that means that there are tannins in white wine, rosé, bubbly, and red wine, right? The tannins exist in grapes. However, when white wine and most rosé are made and sparkling, they are separated from the skins and seeds and stems. The juice is separated quickly. So the tannin level is barely perceptible to most of us. With red wine, the skins are definitely kept around, the seeds are kept around, the stems may or may not be kept around depending on the winemaking process. So tannins are much more prominent in red wine, which is why for today's class, we're just going to focus on red wine. If you really wanted to nerd out, if you like today and you want to keep digging, you can explore the world of skin contact white wines, which are white wines where the juice is fermented with the skins for an extended period of time. So those are white wines that have a higher tannin content, and those will kind of make your mind do loops as you try to figure out what's happening in your mouth. And it's a really interesting thing, but that's not for today. For today, we're just going to focus on reds. Also, you'll notice reds more because they are often aged in oak, where that isn't as common in whites. So just kind of more reason why today's all about reds. One thing worth noting, and why the poll question is so essential today, is that tannins are like real and true, and we can measure them. So it's not something that is only subjective. There are ways to measure the amount of tannin in wine. However, two things happen. One, tannins break down over time. So the amount of tannin in a wine, let's say in the tank right before bottling, it wouldn't really be helpful to say like it has, whatever, X amount of tannin in it. Because if you pick up that wine soon after bottling, it'd be similar to X. If you pick up that wine 3 years after bottling, it's now Y. So that's not a particularly helpful thing. Also, depending on what you drink and what you drink out in life besides wine, what kind of food you eat, all of that kind of stuff plays into your ability to perceive tannin. So it's both an objective thing and a subjective thing. I mentioned that tannins occur in all sorts of things. If you are someone who drinks black coffee, or your tea with, just tea, your black tea, just tea, you are more comfortable with a higher tannin level than someone who drinks their coffee with sugar and milk, or their tea with honey and milk, or doesn't drink either of those beverages ever. And so your idea of what high tannin is going to be very different from the person who never drinks those things. So for the couple of people who answered that they drink white, rosé, and bubbly primarily, your tannin spectrum is going to be very different from the large group of people who said hearty, robust, right? Because you're all going to say, well, like, if it doesn't smack me in the face with tannin, I don't count it. It doesn't have tannin to me. And so it can be a practice in being a little bit mindful and a little bit open to things being different than you kind of think they are, I guess. So the best thing to do after today is to take what you've learned from what we taste through and learn what grapes have the tannin level you prefer. I have found over the course of time that some people are truly open to the whole spectrum. They like low tannin, they like medium tannin, they like high tannin, and they're open. I would say more people tend to fall at one end of the spectrum or another, or even straight in the middle, but that it's not so much like, well, sometimes I'm in the mood for this and sometimes I'm in the mood for that. That might be you. So just kind of figure that out for yourself. And that's what the point of the class is. And then you can really start to dig into what grapes, other than the things you already know, you like. What else should you be exploring? What areas in the world are kind of known for that style of wine, and go from there. So that's kind of where we're headed. And I will say that tannins, knowing what you like in tannins, understanding how they play with food, really goes a hugely long way in becoming someone who is adept at food and wine pairing. If that's not of interest to you, don't worry about it. Like, if you just don't care, if you're like, hey man, I like to eat what I like to eat and I like to drink what I like to drink, and I'm happy with how that all goes together, please live there and be happy there. If you're like, I would like to get to know that more, or sometimes I have a meal and it's like fireworks with the wine, and sometimes I have a meal and it's super meh about the wine, understanding tannins really helps. So we'll talk about this kind of again as we get deeper into it, but lower tannin wines tend to be easier and more flexible with food. Higher tannin wine, because they dry your mouth out so much, they need something that kind of needs to be cut, if that makes sense. So really rich, fatty foods it's really great with that. But if you can picture in your mind a bottle of like a hearty, really robust Bordeaux, something herby and it has tannin and all that good stuff, and like shrimp scampi, and your mind, like, no, like those two things don't go together. You don't want like this very light, delicate dish and this like big, rich wine. That doesn't mean you only drink red wine with red meat, but it does mean that you kind of have to be a little bit more mindful if you're the high tannin person. Questions before we really dig in? Brad's asking if tannins degrade through oxidation, or is it mainly time? It's both. So it's both. It's why aerating and decanting work to kind of soften a wine out. It's the process of oxidation. So, yep, it is both. Other questions? I feel like I just said a lot of words for a chunk of time there. Because tannins come from oak, yeah. Does whiskey have tannin? Usually not. I mean, it might. Sorry. Before I just say no, it might, but kind of more in a way of not being super perceptible. So often in whiskey, they're going to char the barrel. They might even have used it multiple times for something else. So it's not going to be as like obvious oak tannin. So it might be there, but it's going to be a definitely subtle thing that you don't talk about in any real way. Like you're not going to hear some whiskey expert sitting down and talking about the tannin level in a whiskey. Do tannins develop over time? So in the aging process of wine, they can. So pre-bottling aging. So during the winemaking process, when wine is aged in barrels, yes, they can develop more over time. Once the wine is bottled, the tannins are going to slowly degrade over time. We will get there. We're going to talk about aging. It's absolutely one of my very favorite moments in wine class to share with you what happens. So let's pause on that a bit and come back to it. So shout out other questions if you have them, but let's dig in. So we're going to start with low tannin. Beth is asking how tannins can be measured. It's like a solubility test that chemists can do, Beth. So I was mentioning that why your mouth feels dry is because the tannins attach to the protein and it makes them less soluble. So there are a couple different tests. My understanding is neither is like super perfect. Hence another reason that wineries don't like really put out the information about how many tannins are in a wine. It's definitely more a, from a wine professional standpoint, not that they wouldn't measure it, but from like a, is the tannin level where I want it to be, is a tasting thing. But there are solubility tests that they can run, and that, you know, they might run depending on who the winemakers are. All right, we're going to start with low tannin. If you haven't poured yourself some Pinot Noir yet, please do. The list of low tannin grapes is by no means comprehensive, but it's at least a starting place. So if you haven't explored all of these grapes and you like low tannins, great. If you are like, yeah, I know all of those and I want more options, let me know in the chat and we can go through them a little bit after we kind of talk through the wine. So the most, I guess I'd say the most obvious ones in terms of low tannin are Barbera, Gamay, and Pinot. Those kind of like immediately come to mind because they're on the lighter bodied side of things. And so I think people kind of immediately gravitate towards light bodied, light tannin or low tannin. But let's not forget about our friends, things like Malbec, things like Zin, things like Syrah. Those are full-bodied wines that are also low in tannin. So tannin does not have a direct correlation to body. If you don't know what body is, check out my Instagram post. Look at this. It's like so convenient. I did an Instagram post a few weeks ago about body, and they're not necessarily hand in hand. So you can have a full-bodied wine, say Zin, that is low in tannin. If you like these wines, words that you can kind of look for or kind of like be on the lookout for when somebody's describing a wine to you, things like soft, smooth, velvety, gentle, like all these, they're really like texture terms, right? That you can really feel it as somebody is saying it to you, or you're reading a review. You're like, oh yeah, okay, I get how that is going. I mentioned that low tannin wines are food friendly, and they really are. So things like foods that are high in tannin, which are cooked greens. So if you're somebody who likes, kale salad, lots of cooked collards, spinach, those kinds of things, a lighter tannin wine is going to be better for you. They're fantastic with Thanksgiving or other things where there's like a little sweet, savory interplay, and they're really great with spicy food. So, like if you haven't yet this winter made yourself like a pot of really spicy chili or black bean soup with some Malbec or some Zin, it's a delightful, delightful world. So I'm open to hearing what you think of the Pinot overall, for sure. Like, shout stuff out, tell me what you're smelling and tasting. I'm open to all of it, but really the thing to focus on is kind of how your mouth feels as you're drinking, as you're tasting, and after you've tasted, and what's kind of going on. So drink up. Smooth like Velveeta. I'm gonna just take it as a compliment. I don't know that ever comparing something to Velveeta is great, but that's all right. Yeah, Kristen and Patty suggest velvet. I like velvet. I think that's great. Katie's saying light texture and red berry flavors for sure. For sure. Mouth feels not too dry. Smooth, a bit acidic. Yep. Gray says thin. Oh, I hate the word thin for lots of reasons, but we can deal with that another time. Nikki's saying that her mouth feels a little watery, which leads you to acidic, which is what Emmy and Gray were saying right above it. Yeah, for sure. Pinot is a low tannin, medium to high acidic grape. So this wine has low tannin, but high acidity. It is aged in stainless steel. So it has like that kind of, just kind of like bright, fruity, you know, all that good California Pinotness. Patty's getting a little funkiness off of it too. I am too. And I've had this wine many times. I like to use this use this wine in class decently regularly. So I think some of you may have had previous vintages of it. And I am getting a little more funk than I have before. Matt says that it smells like grapes. Great. You know what it's made from? It's made from grapes. Look at that. Mike's saying that it hangs on the glass a little bit. I assume that you're talking about the legs on the side. So the ability, thickness of a wine's legs, hence why I don't like the word thin here. See, this is some body shaming language I don't like, but the legs here, that's all to do with alcohol content and sugar. So it's a wine's viscosity. So in this case, this wine's about 13.5%. It's not particularly like ripe sweet, but it definitely has some fruit to it. So you can kind of see the little, I don't think it's going to come through, but you guys can see it for yourself at home, swirl and kind of watch it trip down the side. Katya and Drew are saying they like the tannin acidity combo. I like the tannin acidity combo too. So not that my opinion, personal, like what I like to drink matters here nor there for you guys. But I do lean towards the low tannin, high acid thing. I care very deeply about how wines go with the food I'm eating. And so for me, I don't want my wine to make my palate stop working. So I would not be answering hearty robust red. Let's just say that. So I'm glad that some of you like it. If you're like, oh, I like the way that it feels, but gosh, I wish it had more oomph to it, right? I don't want it to be so light, so delicate. Then you can explore low tannin, full bodied, right? So Malbec and Zin and things like that. You can kind of lean in that direction. Katie's liking how it smells and wish the taste had more of that smell flavor. Oh, interesting. I think that's a fair assessment. And you might find, Katie, over time, what it's kind of how it's tasting right now. A lot of you are talking on the red fruit, and I think that's going to be there. The red fruit will be there, but perhaps in an hour or two, you'll notice that it kind of is a little bit more cohesive. That feels a little rounder, and so you might find that the aroma kind of is matching it a little bit more. So give it a shot and see how it goes. Alexis is saying that she knows it's low tannin, but she feels like it's more tannin than most Pinots you've had, and that might be because you're focusing on it more. Yeah. I do think that that's probably what it is, right? Like as soon as our mind kind of focuses on something, then it's there. So yes, I will say it's not the like zero, no tannin wine. And the reason that I didn't go in that direction, there are some wines at the shop that kind of might fall into that category even more than this one, although I put this like really pretty low in terms of what we carry. Wines that have none of it, wines that have like no tannin, red wines that have like zero perceptible tannins, they're just out of whack. They're just not balanced. And I am not super into that. So if you are, That's great. And there are those wines out there. You might have to not shop with me to find them. But I think that, like, you know, what comes to mind is like things like kind of mass market red blends. They are, you know, often like liquid velvet and chocolate. I don't go in for that so much. So yes, there's some tannin here, but it's really quite low in terms of like real wine. Guess that I'll stop there. Yeah. And okay, so Kristen and Patty are saying this is not their Pinot, and that is totally fine. She likes earthy mushroom, and this is fruity. She's saying oaky. I'm gonna disagree with you kindly there because it's not aged in oak. And Patty's not happy at all because I know Patty's taste and he likes tannins, and so I am not surprised. So is anybody else grumpy? Is anybody else like, I mean, a lot of you said you liked hearty, robust wines. So if you don't like this wine, I'm not going to be surprised, or my feelings aren't going to be hurt. I wanted you to have a starting point. One end of our spectrum to then where we're going to go. I need to get my hands closer together. Hi, I'm grumpy. This is so great. These are names where I'm like, yeah, I could have told you you weren't going to like this. Katie's saying you're pretty happy with it, but it's not your new fave either. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Nikki likes it. A little too easy to drink. Oh, that's always, yeah. That's always something. For those of you who are, so I feel like there are two maybe buckets of grumpy people here or not loving. How about this? Not loving it. Tim, I'm glad to see that you like it. If you are grumpy because you're like, it is not tannic enough for me, that is legit. You are allowed to just be like, yeah, man, I like more tannins in my wine. You don't feel like you need to like it. If you're like, it's okay, like, I'll drink it. If you are not currently having food, have it with some food, because it is a particularly food-friendly wine. So you might like it more when you start, snacking before dinner and have some cheese and stuff, or you might, whatever you're having for dinner, you have it with some pizza, and then you're like, oh, yeah, this is damn tasty. So kind of, see where you fall. Oh, and this is so great to see. So we've got, I don't usually drink Pinot, but I like this one, and we do drink Pinot and we like it. So great. I'm glad. I don't want people to not like the wine, but I understand that it's not for everybody. Yeah, that's fine. And you mostly drink it with dinners. Yeah, that's exactly where it is. And are there any questions less specific about this, but more general kind of low tannin questions, like what you can expect, what you should be ordering? I mean, I know that we're not all dining out right now, but when the time comes. Places in the world that are going to be known for less tannin. Much of California, not all of California, but places where the grapes are going to get riper, you're going to pick up on more fruit and less tannin. So California is the big one. Australia, lower elevation Argentina. So those are kind of places that you can kind of seek out, warmer climates. Carrie says it goes down smooth. You're getting some blueberry. I totally agree. I am 100% on the blueberry train with you. Mike is asking, is tannin a taste or more a texture? So some people pick up tannin as astringent, as the flavor of astringency. Technically speaking, that's not correct. But I'm not going to tell you that. So it's kind of like the bitter. It can taste bitter, but more than that, it's not that it is a texture, it's what it actually is physically doing in your mouth. So it is going to dry your tongue and your cheeks out, and it's going to make you want a glass of water. And I think if it's hard to perceive it right now, That's because this is a low tannin wine. So if you're kind of like, I'm not sure I'm there yet, let's go to our second wine and we'll get there. And Katya and Drew are asking, do tannins tend to be higher when the grapes are less ripe or vice versa? It's that when they're crushing the grapes and they're fermenting with the skins and seeds, if the sugar's a little higher, it can kind of mess up our perception of it. It's also like when I mention, so it's not necessarily that it's that tannins are lower when a grape is less ripe. A great example of that, I guess I would say, is the central coast of California. There are lots of wines coming out from that region that are quite aggressive in their tannin level. They're really ripe grapes too. And the winemakers are going to do some finessing with oak aging, perhaps keeping the stems on to amp up the tannin level as well. So it's not necessarily a 1-to-1 ratio. It's just that often in those warm climates, you'll find that those are kind of that's the wine style that they're going for, a riper, less tannic taste. Acids make you salivate and tannins don't. Yes. Janina's question. Is it correct to say that acidity and tannins are opposites? Yes, they are. And we're gonna play with our ability here with our next wine. So let's keep the train rolling. Here's what I'm gonna say, guys. When I structure class and I pick the wines, the order of the wines, I always end with the highest tannin wine because it does kind of make your palate a little less able to perceive things. However, I feel like the way that this class makes the most sense to talk about tannins and what they do and their value and all that kind of stuff is to start with the spectrum and then kind of move on to the more, I don't know, taking it another step further, I guess is how I'll say it. So I'm going to ask you to come along on this journey with me where you're going to have a high tannin wine and then we're going to backtrack a little to a less tannic wine. Please don't rinse your wine glasses with water. It's just going to water down the wine. That's not going to help you. But I suggested everybody have a glass of water with them. I really would suggest drinking some water now, and then definitely after this wine, and then before our third. I think that you can do it. You can do it, guys. I promise you. I trust you. So let's talk about high tannins. We're going to taste the Carde du Astili is the name of the wine. So high tannin grapes, I have some listed there, and there are a whole lot of others. Tannat is a French grape that is quite prominent in its tannin. Cab, Petite Sirah, Tempranillo, which we'll taste to end, Nebbiolo, Sangiovese, all sorts of grapes. What is Tannat? What do you mean, what is Tannat? Seriously? We have to have talked about Tannat. Tannat is a grape that is grown in the Dordogne region of France, so just like west of, and then even further southwest of Bordeaux, so kind of like the southwestern corner. No, please don't apologize. I'm just I can't believe that we haven't talked about Tannat. So it's grown in the southwestern corner of France. It's, and it's now grown in Uruguay, and a little bit in Chile and a little bit in Argentina. But Tannat is this thick, black-skinned grape that is really, really aggressive in tannin. We have a 50-50 Merlot Tannat blend at Table Wine. Sometimes we've had 100% Tannats. I haven't had one recently that I like. I don't even know that there is one even available in the market at this point in time. So that's what Tannat is. If you like this style of wine, words that you can look for, I used hearty and robust in the poll. Those are definitely words you're going to hear. Firm, big tannins, grippy. That's my word of the day for this wine is grippy. And I talked through food pairing a little bit already at the beginning, just to say that because of what it's going to do to your mouth, you're going to want some umami. So you're going to want some aged cheddar. You're going to want some mushrooms. You're going to want grilled beef, soy sauce marinade, red wine marinade, herbs, those kinds of equally robust things. Amelia might be broken. She says this one makes her mouth less dry than the last one, and this one is really good. Okay, let's dig in. I will say that this wine is high in acidity. So Janina's question about are acidity and tannins opposites? We might have a little interplay here of acidity and tannin. But I don't think that there's any denying that that is what is going to happen when you finish drinking this wine. Shout me out if I'm wrong, but like, it's all the tannins, man. It's all the tannins. Like, it starts like it's not all the tannins, and you're going to like, does Molly know what the hell she's talking about? Did she pick the wrong wine? And then there they are. The winery refers to these tannins as fractal tannins. That's the first time I've ever heard that phrase. But I do think it's kind of, it is a little bit like what's happening, right? Where you like, at first you don't perceive them, and then it's like, boom, there they are. There you think they're gone again. You all are getting really caught up on the smell. That's fine. We can just move past it. It's a natural wine. They don't add any sulfites. I didn't pick it to talk about the aroma. I'm not adverse to it, but I'm gonna say, like, I'm not gonna really spend a lot of time talking about the aroma. It's cool if you don't like it. It totally smells like a barn. It straight up does. Amelia thinks this one is more balanced. I'm glad that you like the taste of it. I don't know that I would say it's more balanced. I wouldn't necessarily say it's less balanced, I guess, but smoother. Amelia, I'm going to call Amelia out here. What do you usually drink? I'm very curious. Very easy to tell the tannin feel on this one. Whole mouth, not just tongue. Sweet whites. Well, that is very curious to me that this feels smoother to you. I am quite surprised. I'll just say that. I don't really have an explanation for that. I am in the camp of the Alexis and others who are saying the tannins are super easy to feel right now. My mouth is like dry. I drink a lot of white wine. I don't drink a lot of red wine, and I don't know. I can't explain how this feels smoother to you than the other wine, because it's invariably more tannic and less smooth. So decaying leaf matter, which is awesome. I love it. I love it. Brad's asking what plays into how tannins feel, thinking of the donut tannins versus others. So Brad, there was this belief that I will tell varietals in just a hot second, everybody. There was this belief for a while when I was first kind of like learning about wine that oak tannins hit you in one place and varietal tannins hit you in a different place in your mouth, and that has been disproven. But what I do know is that you can, some tannins hit you at the front of the tip of your tongue, and some hit you on the cheeks and in the back of your throat, and that it is kind of a combination of all of those things. So the varietal itself, the amount of tannin in one grape versus another grape, the way that the wine is aged, all of that stuff. So I'm sorry that that's not like a great answer. The answer is they used to think it was this. They said, no, it's not this, but now we're not exactly sure how it is the way it is. Cool, thanks. Isn't that great? For those of you asking what the varietals are, yes. So I will say, it's not super They're not common. I picked this wine less because it's like, oh, here, now you know, you can go buy this grape, and more because it was like, that's it, grippy. Like there's the grippy thing, right? Like somebody feels like somebody's holding my tongue. And I just wanted everybody to kind of have an understanding of grippy. So the grapes are Cannonau, which is the name for Grenache on the island of Sardinia, which is where this wine is from. So it's Cannonau, which is not high tannin, and a grape called, what they call there, Bovali Sardo, pardon me, which is the same name as Graciano. So Graciano is what gives it the fractal tannins. And then a couple other Sardinian grapes, one called Manica and one called Pascale. So I will write that in the chat, and it is on the invoice that y'all got. Like it will be under the actual item. So if you want to kind of revisit it, you can come back to it. But I will say you can't just like go out. I mean, I think you know this. You can't like go out and say, oh, I would like a Bovali Sardo, please. I like the way that feels. But now, you know, at least now you know that. I'm glad that so many of you are enjoying it though. It's such a tasty wine, right? I really enjoyed it. And I do think there's acidity there. I do think that it's like it is nicely balanced. I'm not gonna say it's more or less than the Sandpoint. It is nicely balanced though. It does have some of that yummy Italian acidity. It's kind of fun. And does it make a difference that the bottle is clear while other wine bottles are green? Not a ton, Mike. It's a good question. So Carde Du is the winery. They're natural winemakers, meaning that they don't add any sulfites to the wines. So they are not intending for their wines to be aged. They want their wines to be drunk young. So they want these wines to go out, find good homes, get drunk. The wine to get drunk. You can also get drunk while you do that. So they are not, yeah, get drunk. They want the wines to be drunk. Anyway, yes, good homes. They want it in your stomach, but they want their wines to not sit on the shelf at a wine store, is what I'm trying to say. They don't want their wines to, you know, be on somebody's like reserve list at a restaurant. They want their wines to be on the glass pour list. They want them to be going out, people drinking them while they're fresh and delicious and tasting the way that the winemaker intends them to be tasted. So all of that leads to them deciding to put it in clear glass to indicate that, hey, like it's picnic wine. I'm seeing it more and more in natural winemakers in Italy, where they're going for clear glass for fresh white or fresh reds. So it is definitely an aesthetic choice. Yes, like over time, light damage might become a thing if that were to sit around, but nothing sits around table wine that long. So we're not in any danger of that. And just like, don't buy a case of this and have it age for, 5 years or something like that. That's not the point of this wine. Kristen and Patty are asking, is this one a good one to try your decanter on? Yeah, and like particularly if you're not loving the barn smell, which I can imagine maybe one of you might not love this, the smell of decomposing leaves or barn or whatever you want to call it. Definitely you can decant it and that aroma will kind of go down. And the tannins will get slightly less grippy. Yes. Yeah. Yep. The tannins will be a little less grippy. It'll become a slightly more cohesive unit. Although my understanding of how the winemaker, like they want this wine to be a little disjointed, I guess would be the word. Heisley saying that she loves everything about this wine, and thanks so much for sitting. I'm so glad. I tasted this wine a month ago, and no, I guess it was a little bit before that. It was actually before this class was scheduled, so it had to have been before that. And I was like, God, I like that wine a lot. Who's it for? Like, who says I want natural from Sardinia, but like I want some hella tannins? And like I was like, I don't know, I can't quite wrap my brain around who's going to like it? And then when I was going through my notes to see what would be a fun high tannin wine to pour in this class that you all haven't had a million times, what's something that might be new to you guys, I was like, oh, that Esteli is so grippy. That'll be such a cool teaching moment. So I'm really glad to see that some of you are enjoying it. Brad's asking, are there wineries that just opt to make super tannic wines, kind of like double or triple IPAs? For sure. Absolutely. There are wineries that are like, that's what we're going after. We're going for tannins. That's like our calling card. Often that kind of goes hand in hand with like a new oak usage. And so they have those wines tend to be like big oaky bombs would be the word I would use. And Tim saying you like the funk and that the balance is good too. I'm super glad. I'm super, super glad. And I also like that if you are somebody who answered like, I drink the other category of red wine, like light bright Italians or funky or something else, like this wine also kind of gives you that. So it's a little bit of a mind trip. All right. In the you are in tannistic heaven. Is that a word? I don't know that that's a word, but I'm super glad that you are enjoying you're the educator, Beth. If you decide that that's a word, I'm not going to tell you no. You set the rules. All right. In the interest of time, I want to make sure that we give the last wine its definite due time. So if you have questions about high tannins, drop them in the chat, but we're going to move on. We're going to open that last Rioja. So we talked about, we saw our spectrum. And then I really wanted to talk about okay, great. So I know I like a lot of tannin in my wine, or I know that I don't. What else? Is there something else? Is there some reason to care about tannins beyond just that? And the answer most definitely is yes. Tannins are one of the things in wine that help them age well. So wines age well if they are high in tannin, high in acidity, high in alcohol, or high in sugar. So like a Riesling is high in acidity and high in sweetness. And so you can age Rieslings for literally ever. But wines that are high in tannin age really well. And I think that it's really cool to see, what do you mean? What does it mean? What do you mean it ages well? Let's talk about it. So what happens is that over time, those tannins break down. I've mentioned that a couple of times. And they will physically feel smoother in your mouth. But what happens as the polyphenols break down is that they turn into different compounds that have that are the tertiary aromas. So those are things like tobacco and leather smells, old book, those kinds of things. So this wine is from 2011. This winery releases their wines when they think they're ready. So this is the current vintage. So whereas the Esteli is, our fresh fruity, hey, let's drink right now. And that's 2019. Our friends at Lopez de Heredia are like, we are just going to sit. We're just going to let the wines be and rest until they taste the way we want them to. And so this is what they want the wine to taste like. So here we are with a decade-old wine, which is really just, I think, is super fun. So if you haven't ever had an aged wine, now you will. And if you drink aged wine all the time, you're like, okay, that's cool. That's delicious. So from a food pairing perspective, I would say when I'm drinking something like this, when I go down to my cellar and I'm getting something that is, has some significant age on it, I'm going to let the wine be the star. I'm going to let the food be the backup singers, right? So no disrespect to Kelly and Michelle, but this is our Beyonce, right? This is it here. Right? Okay, so I'm seeing lots of people talking about the aroma. I didn't want to get caught up in the aroma on the last wine, but like, please, we can get as caught up in the aroma of this wine as we want to, because that's what happens. That's what tannins breaking down over time. So let's see, kind of spicy smell. Matt says it smells like warm weather. Oh my gosh, I love that. Alexis is saying that she loves the thought process of Lopez de Heredia, that she'd rather have somebody else keep it for 10 years, right? Like, it's great. I don't have to pay for it and then like pretend I didn't remember it. Leather, Scotch, prunes. It smells pretty. It smells like bourbon. It smells so freaking good. Like, I'm sorry. It just smells so good. I mean, it's everybody's happy place. My God, like please, I'm like Miss Loire Valley whites, right? And then I drink this wine and I'm just like, oh, I'm speechless. I literally don't have anything to say. Like, I'm just like, that's this wine. I'm glad to see, for those of you who were grumpy about the Pinot Noir, that you are not grumpy about this wine. And Amelia likes it too. Like, see, like that to me, I'm like, yeah, this is just great wine, right? Like, it's just like, that's it. It smells handsome. I think that I love that so much. You know, it smells pretty. Oh, it smells handsome. I love it. Coconut. Yeah. So there is definite, like, not surprisingly, it's very, very common in Rioja for them to use new or used American oak, but they like American oak in Rioja. They think it plays very nicely with Tempranillo. So that coconut kind of thing is from the oak aging. And then the kind of like the leather and the grandma's house things, the raisin prune things, those are kind of the aging. I take this smell home to meet my parents. Oh my God, I think that wins the day. You're all saying really wonderful things, but like that, I'm actually, I'm writing that down, pardon me. I'd take this smell home to meet my parents. Michael, I hope that you're okay with me putting that on social media because that's too freaking good. And nice fatty mouthfeel afterward, right? That's the thing. Like, I do think that this is, it's not just like, oh my God, look, it smells so great. And isn't that wonderful? And then it's, oh, it's complex. And oh, the way it smells, yes, I taste that on the palate, but then I taste other things too. And there are still tannins there. And I will say, some of you have heard me wax on about this winery. I was able to visit a couple of years ago and drink wines from their cellar. And I had a white from my birth year, which that's a long time ago. So their whites even have some tannin to them. And then I had a red from my wedding year. So that would have been 2004 in 2018. And it was still kind of like, oh, you could drink this in 20 years. And I think that that's what's really, this is not inexpensive, but relatively speaking, for the quality of wine that you're getting, the fact that this is a $30 bottle of wine, and no matter who you are, you can stick this in a cool place and drink it 10 years from now, 20 years from now, then, not the next big birthday, like 3 big birthdays from now, you could drink this wine and it'll still be phenomenal. So that's kind of fun. Alexa's backing me up on the order. Thank you. I do think that, like, there's part of it, the idea of palate fatigue is real, but we are only doing 3 wines. And so I thought you guys could handle it. And I think you all seem to be doing just fine. So, Mike is saying the taste lingers and it's not just the tannins. It's correct. Absolutely 100% correct, right? I feel like you can still taste the aroma, and that is like, that's why people age wine. And that's why people spend a lot of money on wine. I mean, there's lots of wine that is more expensive than this that does not taste anywhere near this good. But then there you have these moments. These are the moments. Yeah. I'm so glad that you have lamb waiting. That's really great. Katie's asking, how would I know which wines will age this well? Tannins, alcohol, certain places in the world. So Rioja is a big one, Piedmont, particularly Nebbiolo. Those are the two biggest ones. So if you want to kind of get started there, we can also talk more about like, well, this is what I like. So what of the things I like are going to age well? We can definitely do that. A number of the people here tonight are in our cellar club. So we do that. And that's an every other month thing where I pick the wine specifically for you. So that is why when I was saying like, oh, I know who likes tannins and who doesn't, it's because those people are in the cellar club and I'm able to say like, yep, I have picked, you know, things like this for you. So yeah. Kristen and Pat, you're saying, and then with the high tannin one would have been sad. This is perfect. I'm glad. I mean, it's just really kind of lovely. So, can you taste it today and know if it will be good in 5 years? I don't mean this to sound snotty at all, but no, I don't think the average person can taste a wine and say like, yes, I know that that will age well. I think that that is what wine professionals are for, to at least get you started, to kind of really pinpoint some things that you're looking for. I'm not saying like you could never get there, but I don't want you to shoot in the dark. I don't want you to like, oh, well, I maybe this cab or maybe that cab, you know, or like, I'm just going to grab this like $12 Bordeaux and hope for the best. A lot of things will taste good. A lot of things will continue to taste good. And then there are the wines like this, where it's like fireworks, right? Like where it's like, whoa, that's a different kind of wine than I've had before, right? So it kind of also depends on like what you hope to gain from it. Just because you age something for 5 years is not necessarily going to taste like this. Is there anybody out there, I should ask, is anybody grumpy about this wine? Because that's legitimate too. I have had employees who have worked for me who have told me that they don't like they were unimpressed with this wine. Nikki doesn't love it. Okay. It's totally fair. Aged wine smells different, tastes different. It's not, okay, so Katya liked the last one better and Nikki saying she doesn't love it, right? Like, that's fair. And that's why I asked, and thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it, because those tertiary aromas might be off-putting, or maybe just like, meh, like, okay. Or, you know, like, okay, I'd drink it again. I'm not mad, but I'm not like, oh my God, yes, please. That's totally fair, right? That's what makes the world go around. Kristen and Patty asked if I fired them. I did not, but I will say that I definitely pulled back. I'll just say that. When they told me that it was not a good food pairing, they said, I want a bottle to impress my partner's boss. And I was like, oh, well then here, like, this is it. They were having lamb and I was like, here you go. And I was like, this is great. And then she was like, oh, it was kind of meh. And then, you know, I was like, oh, and I was like, you wanted like Napa fruit. You wanted like big, bold, you know, flavors. And like, I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to go over here and drink. I'm going to go drink the Lopez de Heredia over here. I'm glad. And I'm glad for those of you who are being super honest. Like, thank you, because there's a spectrum here and you are allowed to say, hey man, I liked the Pinot the most. You're allowed to say, well, turns out I didn't like any of these. I don't think any of you were in that boat. But just because, you know, whatever, I have a personal connection, you know, like F that, like what you like, be honest. So I'm glad to see it. Yeah. So, all right. It appears that we are at a time, guys. If there are lingering questions, I'll stick around for a minute or two. Thank you for coming on the road with me, of the tannin road with me. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, thank you. I'm super, super glad. I really love the lineup because I think that it's like just such a different. Oh, thanks, Mike, for asking. The food pairing, I can make that big again. So as I mentioned, I would say let the wine kind of be the star. So lamb is really beautiful with this specific wine. Lamb is really beautiful with this. Grilled pork tenderloin, but go kind of subtle, you know, not like a spice rub, more just like maybe some thyme and rosemary, maybe not even rosemary to overpower it. Some aged cheeses, not necessarily your 20-year-old hooks, but, you know, some aged Italian cheese, something like that, some manchego, some aged Gouda, something like that. So it's a beautiful food wine. In this part of Spain, they have it with suckling pig. That's not really something that we eat around here too much, but I would say pork tenderloin is going to kind of hit on the same basic flavor profile. I have actually had this wine with fish, seafood, like a whole roasted lavraki, or like sea bass. Sea bream, I should say, not sea bass. And it's also really pretty with seafood. So you could go that direction too. Oh, it's so great to see all of you. Thank you all so much. Oh, I'm so glad that you learned a lot. That's great. Beth, not a big fan of, or not a big red wine drinker, but you liked all of them. That's great. That's so great. I'm so glad that you guys learned a lot. It was wonderful. Thank you all so much. If you haven't already signed up, we're going to do blind red tasting the day before Valentine's Day. So if you celebrate Valentine's Day, like, hey, fun stay and date night. If you don't, get some friends together maybe and do it virtually, because blind tasting is super, super fun. And we have Washington State up at the end or later in February. So if you are the hearty, robust red wine drinkers, Washington State is a great place to explore. So you can join us then. So thank you guys so much. And like, enjoy all this deliciousness this weekend. All right. I'm so glad. See y'all later.